Hello, I'm Mrs. Erman from the Finley-Sharon FFA chapter. I have gotten some questions on how the corsage and boutonniere should look. So first of all, students are given explicit instructions at the beginning of the corsage and boutonniere practicum of the floriculture event. Okay? And it tells them exactly the way this corsage and boutonniere should look and how they should package it. But we're going to go through how to do that today just because I had some extra flowers left over from something else. So the first instruction is to make a single flower boutonniere with a large carnation. So this would be an example of a large carnation. And that is to include filler flowers. So a baby's breath is usually the most common, and some greenery, which would be some leatherleaf fern. I have my floral tape ready. I have a wire cutter right there, and I have some wire. So we want to wire the calyx first. These three right here are for the corsage. So the corsage directions will state that you need to make a multi-flower corsage. And if we follow proper rules of floral design, under 10, there should be 3 or odd numbered flowers, so 3 is perfect. But you want to make sure they're all different sizes. So I have a larger one, a medium one, and a small one. And we're going to put those off to the side because we're going to make the boutonniere first. So I'm going to put those off to the side. I'm also only going to pick out one large leatherleaf fern, and I'm going to put these off to the side as well and get my tape ready. And I also need some baby's breath, so I'm going to take a couple sprigs, and just so that it's not in the camera view so much, I'm going to put it off to the side. And we don't need ribbon. There should not be a bow on the boutonniere. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some of these leaves from the leatherleaf fern, and I'm going to get rid of them. That's about what I want right there. Okay. And I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter. So I'm just going to use the wire cutters. There's scissors provided as well. And we want this stem to be about 1.5 inches from right here where the calyx ends to the end. That should be about right. Okay. So the first step is to wire and tape the carnation, the large carnation. And we're going to take one piece of wire. Your FFA members should need only 5 pieces of wire in the entire thing. And they'll be cut like this in vases. And it's usually 18 gauge wire or 20 gauge wire. Most of the time it's 20 gauge because it's thinner. So the first thing we're going to do is pierce through the calyx crosswise with our wire, like this, and bring it into the middle. We're going to fold that down on each side. This gives more stability to our flower right now. And then we take our tape. So floral tape, if you've never used floral tape before, it becomes sticky when you stretch it. It also becomes a lighter color. So I'm going to stretch a little bit to make it sticky right away. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape. So I'm going to spin and kind of turn around and pull at the same time. And I'm going to tape my carnation up past the wire. So there should never be any wire showing on anything, actually. You really shouldn't have any wire showing at all. So I'm going to wire that all the way to tape it all the way down to the bottom of the wires. Okay, I'm actually going to snip this off because usually the boutonniere has a blunt tip on it, so that I'm back to my original length. We'll come back and tape that again to make sure that there's no wires poking through on it. So the next thing I'm going to do is take my filler flower, which is usually offered as baby's breath, and I'm just going to take a couple sprigs and arrange them around my carnation. Okay, we don't want to overpower the carnation. We want to accent it. I might do one more little one, kind of like that. Okay, so then I take my tape And this is the hardest part, I think, is to hold everything there and then tape it down. So you're going to tape those on, and you don't have to tape them all the way. I'm just going to get it on so it sticks. So see how that sticks out slightly? That's what we want. And we'll come back and fix that up around the bottom a little bit better too. Take some of those little flowers out. The next thing is to put our leather leaf fern in the back. So we want it to be full, but we don't necessarily want this to be really, really sharp. So you can actually pinch this off, which I'm going to do right about there. And see how it accents it, comes around it. I can pull it up a little bit more, but it's not going to be sticking up while the person's wearing it and being annoying. That's what we were looking for. So now I'm going to take my tape again and tape up a little higher, this time into my baby's breath. And you can see some of the baby's breath goes all the way around. That's fine. And then I'm going to finish taping all the way to the bottom. I'm also going to trim these stems before I get to the bottom. I'm going to show you my little trick for hiding any wires at the end. We don't want wires to poke anybody. So I trim that and I tape. So I'm spinning and pulling so it adheres to itself all at the same time. Okay, I go past it a little bit and then I fold that back up and then I come back and twist and tape back up to the top. That caps this end off, which is really nice. It's a nice touch. And if there's little gaps, the tape is flexible. I'm going to bulk this up a little bit right in the middle just because it's a little skinny. The tape is flexible and malleable with the touch of your finger because heat is activating that adhesive, and you can actually disguise some of those things. So see, I didn't rip that very well, but if I go like this with my finger and rub it in, it looks fine. So this would be a good example, and I could have made this a little taller too if I wanted. A good example of what the boutonniere should look like. The boutonniere should be done. Okay, I always tell my kids to do the boutonniere first because then you get it out of the way and you get a little taping practice. You get in the rhythm of taping a little bit better, and then you put it in the bag circled with the card circled boutonniere, and make sure that their name is on it and their chapter number. So I'm going to put this off to the side. We'll come back to it. And then I'm going to get out the things for my corsage. So my 3 odd size flowers. I still need baby's breath, and I still need leather leaf fern. Okay, now I'm going to need the ribbon as well, so we'll get there in a second. But we're going to wire each one of these, piercing through the calyx for each of the carnations. This gives us more flexibility and the ability to move them around a little bit more. And I'll show some different configurations, but I'll also show my favorite as well. So each of these flowers needs greenery and filler. Before we do that, I'm going to get that ready. So this would have actually been a pretty good candidate even for our boutonniere, just because it's wider and the tip is a little bit smaller. But we're not going to actually use that one for the corsage. I'm looking for smaller leaves of leather leaf. And I stripped them. I want them about that size. Okay. I strip some more. And I need 5 of them. Okay, we're still going in that odd number. So that one's a little smaller. And this one. And this one right here. So I like to choose a little bit smaller ones at the top for this one because we're putting more leaves. You don't need to put 5 on. That's just my preference because of odd numbers. So now I have my leaves prepared. I have that already. And what I'm actually going to do, I don't like this one because this is actually off of some graduation flowers that have been sitting around for a few days. Why waste good practice material? And I'm going to replace it with this one that I just stripped because I like the color of that a little bit better. That does not matter. And your corsage and boutonniere in the contest do not need to match either. I'm going to bust these off right at the node right away. The length of this that we'll get for curling at the end comes from the wire. We also want to get rid of those little leaves because that's going to be a little bit of a nuisance when you're trying to tape as well. So I'm going to take my wire. I'm going to do the first one, the big one first. I'm going to pierce through my calyx, fold down, and actually I'm going to do that to all of them, okay, before I tape. And you're going to go about halfway through the calyx is what you want, maybe up a little higher if you have a bigger flower, just to provide flexibility in it. So now I should only have one wire left, and that's for making my bow. So, and this one wasn't particularly even, but that's okay. So I have them all wired, and now I take some tape. I had a couple rolls. I'm just simply going to tape these down to the bottom. Okay, remember you're pulling and twisting or wrapping. Taping is often one of the things that gets scored on the most, the neatness of taping, and well, obviously the ranging. But you want to make sure that the tape is nice and tight. So then I do my, oh, I did the small one first. I'm going to do the large one and then the medium one. I'm going to tape them all up. So essentially what I'm doing is I am making 3 tiny little boutonnieres with mini carnations and arranging them together with a bow to form a multi-flower corsage. And these are not fresh as the ones at the contest will be, so the calyxes are a little bit more flexible. Just depends on the freshness of the flower. So I'm not going to tape all the way to the end of the wire, but we're going to need that wire at the end, so don't cut it off yet. So now I'm going to find some baby's breath. Okay, so I like this one. I'm going to put it around here, maybe a little more. And white was just the color that we had. Okay. Then this is the medium one, so it only gets 1 leaf. That's how I teach my students. 1 leaf. And I'm going to tape this all together. They can tape it separately like we did with the boutonniere, especially if they're not comfortable. Okay, and I'm going to tape it down. So that section's done. And then we're going to do the little one. So this is going to use less, so this one doesn't have a lot of flowers on. I'm going to find some better baby's breath. Maybe this one. See how this one, I can actually go all the way around. I can split it and go all the way around and pull some flowers off if I think it's a little much. And I think it is a little bit much. There we go. And we don't want them sticking out too much either. So you can manipulate that. And because I split it around there, I'm just going to tack it on with a little tape. Pull my flower petals up a little bit. Okay. And this one also is just going to get 1 leaf, so I'm going to choose this nice sized one right there. And because I stripped the leaves off already, that's already done, and I don't need to do it. Then I'm going to tape this all the way down as well. So we're bulking up our stem a little bit with adding the greenery as well. So that's the mini one. And now we're going to move to the large one. So we have 3 leaves left. And we're going to put all 3 leaves around this after we figure out our baby's breath. So I'm going to rip some baby's breath apart and kind of put it around. Like I said, I don't want it to overpower it by any means. But I do want to accent it. I think that's something that is overlooked. We don't want to overpower with the baby's breath. We want to accent. I might steal one off of here like this. Okay. And your students should gather their materials first and know what they need, because there's going to be other students that don't, and they're going to be all over the place trying to find what they need. I'm going to tape this baby's breath all the way around because I use a little bit more. It's a bigger flower. Okay. So I got that done, and now I got the 3, so I'm going to get rid of my baby's breath. I don't need that anymore. I'm all done with that. I'm going to put my 3 leaves around, spaced evenly. Because I taped it, the baby's breath on there already, I don't have to worry about it moving around, okay, which is nice. So now, see how I make a triangle, and then I leave a space? That's where our bow is going to go. So I'm going to tape my leaves on now, and you can fan it out at the end a little bit and move it around a little. I'm going to clip some of this so I don't get too much bulking right there. And this is where you're going to want to check to make sure that there's nothing sticking out. Everything looks in order right there. Okay, so now I have all 3 of my mini boutonnieres. And now I need to make them into a corsage that has a bow. So I need to make a bow. And I'm going to push them out of the way. And now I need my last piece of wire. And I'm going to bend it over my fingernail, like this in the middle approximately, and put that off to the side. And then I'm going to get some ribbon. So I just happen to have red on top in my box. And there will be all kinds of different colors. We said they don't have to match. We know that they're trying to get done as fast as possible. And I'm going to cut off of this roll, so they can do it off of the roll, but for ease of movement, I'm going to cut off probably about an arm length. It should cut with the wire cutters, but they're, like I said before, they're scissors, and this wire cutter isn't very sharp, so grab a pair of scissors, and this is more than plenty ribbon that we need. I'm just going to cut my end a little bit better because the wire cutter made it a little bit frayed. So if we look, I'm going to bring this one back. We look at this flower, and we want to make sure that our bow is about this wide, a little bit wider than the flower itself, but not quite as wide as the leaves. So a good rule of thumb is that the bow should be 1.5 times as wide as the flower. So altogether, that'd be 1/4 on each side. So right now I'm guessing that my loops need to be about that big. So I'm going to start with my ribbon. This is single face satin ribbon, and this is typically what's given. It just depends on what supplies are brought to the contest. It could be double faced, which makes it a little easier. This is how I tie my bow. Often some people will do a little thumb loop. That's fine. It hides the wire a little bit. But if we're looking for speed, this is a little bit faster. So I'm going to grab between my fingers, my thumb and my forefinger, with the shiny side up. And I'm going to make a sharp twist. I have about 2 inches. And I'm going to put that sharp twist in between my thumb and my forefinger. And now I have dull side on top and shiny side on the bottom. And we're going to make our first loop. So keeping in mind our size factor, this is going to be our largest loop. So I'm making this loop about 1 inch. Okay. Then I'm going to sharply twist underneath my finger. So now this loop is shiny, and now this is dull on this side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the same size loop, and now the loop is shiny. And then I'm going to twist, and I'm going to make a slightly smaller loop, not much smaller, just slightly smaller. Twist so that it's dull again, and then come up from the bottom and make another loop, slightly smaller. Okay, and then I'm going to twist again. So this is dull, fold over to get a shiny loop, slightly smaller again. Okay, there we go. And you can manipulate this pretty easily. And then One more. And you don't need to twist the last loop. So you can see that I have quite a bit of ribbon left over. I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to take my wire that I already folded and I'm going to slide it in between. Okay. Trying to get that fold and that wire right in the middle. And then I'm going to pull all my loops like this and tighten my wire right up to the ribbon. And I do that by actually grabbing the loops and twisting. If there is time, I highly suggest having them, so I'm going to trim this now so it's hidden. You don't want to trim too much because it could slip out on you and then you have no ribbon left to work with. So it makes a nice little fan. I highly suggest taping it if you have time. If you don't, that's something that if you have like a 2-minute warning left and you are still making the bow, skip this part and go put it in with your corsage and get your corsage done and packaged. So I'm just going to tape it halfway down or so, right like that. Okay, so now I'm going to assemble. So there's a couple ways you can do this. This is the more modern way, to put 3 like this over here, and then we put our bow in the middle. So the top 2 are next to each other and the big one's on the bottom. Okay, that's perfectly acceptable. In fact, I really like the way this looks in this one right now, especially with the red ribbon. A different way that's a little bit more old-fashioned. You start with the big flower, you put the bow, we want the bow to be tucked down in there. Okay, then we go medium, and then we go small. And this is, I also like this as well. So this one's a little higher. And this is for wearability. It lays more flat. So now that I have them arranged, I'm going to keep it this way for this one. I'm going to tape it all together. So I'm holding it, and all of this is taped and covered, which is great because that saves you a lot of time right now, where we're just taping them so that they stick together. And I'm going to tape all the way to the end. I'm actually going to use all this length, and you'll see why in a second. So I'm going to go all the way down, fold, okay, and this one, when it's skinny, it gets a little tricky. Okay. And I'm going to tape all the way back. So you can see that I probably would have some gaps, but because I taped all the way really well before, we're not going to see that. And I'm going to tape a little bit back down. This helps when you roll up the end so that nothing sticks out. We're not trying to bulk it up here. We're just trying to get that a little bit more so I can rearrange. And so now, because they're on wires, if I want this one over a little bit, I can do that, and I can arrange it like this. Okay, so now we're looking for flatness and how it will wear. So I hold it up against my hand, and now I can see where I can start curling. So underneath I have my thumb, and then I'm going to start curling this, and you're going to hear some cracking. That's the stems, and I'm going to curl my stem right like this. So now I see that I have a wire sticking out at the end. I'm going to take my wire trimmer actually and cut that, kind of camouflage it. I'm going to take a little tape. I want that covered. Don't want to poke anybody or poke through the bag. I'm going to take a little tape and fix that. And because of the way floral tape works, I can blend that in, and no one would know the difference. And then I have a nice curl all the way to the end. So then I would be finished. I check to make sure that nothing's sticking out. That's what you should always do. And I have 2 of them. So they go in different packages. There's bags available, and you're going to put them in a bag. and pin them shut. But before you do that, you need to have the proper pins with them. So the boutonniere gets a black pin. Okay, and I don't have one at my table handy right now. So I'm going to put two sticky notes. Okay, that one's a little dirty. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. Black pin. So why do we use a black pin on a boutonniere? Black matches usually the color of the tux that someone is wearing, and it camouflages when it's pinned on. Okay, boot. Circle that. Circle that on your card. This one should have 1 to 2 pearl pins stuck in there. And I am going to go, or wait, do I have one here? Nope, I don't have one handy. We'll use this. I do have a yellow one handy. So imagine this is pearl. The way you pin them in, and we're just going to put it on the boutonniere, you want to make sure that it is stuck up in there, like that, stuck into the flower. You don't want to put it in like this. It's going to be actually pretty difficult to put it in like that. Don't do that. We don't want to see that. That's going to hurt somebody. You're going to poke through someone else's flowers. Up from the bottom, hidden. Okay, you do the same thing, only on the corsage, it makes it easy to put it up from the back. And then I would put 2 of them in there. Then you close the bag, you fold the bag over and close it with a pearl pin on each one. And that is the basics. Okay, I'll hold them up the way they look. That is the basics of how I teach my students how to make the corsages and boutonnieres. Notice though, on this one, the bow is the proper width. It's not quite outside the leaves, but it is in proportion to the flower. You want to make sure of that too. And there's no bow on the boutonniere. And this would be what I would bag up or have my students bag up and turn in as a final product. So that this needs to be done. So I spent a lot of time explaining this in a certain time frame, and I believe it's 15 minutes, I think. Let's see what it is for sure. Oh, 30 minutes. Okay, participants get 30 minutes to make both of them. So you should be able to finish this one in, I'd say, 12-ish minutes. Okay, because there's going to be some time to get your materials as well. And then this one, you would use the remainder of the time to do that. There's a 2-minute warning as well to get it all done. And once that warning goes, or the timer goes off, we will take what's ever on the table, and then you clean up afterwards. So I hope my little lesson was helpful. Just to review a bit, the things you will need. Let's see. Grab a piece of paper. Okay. Just a scratch piece of paper. And so I'm right at 30 minutes with this video, actually, or almost 30 minutes. You will need, or your student will need, 1 large carnation, 3 mini carnations. Okay. Filler flower. This could be baby's breath, which is the most common, I think, that we get for the contest, or wax flower. That's purple, usually in color, and it's a little bit bigger than baby's breath. It can still be used just the same. You get a nice little bunch some ribbon. And this can be gotten later. Okay. And tape, pins, and your leather leaf. And I used today 6 of them. Okay, 1 large one, 1 large, 5 smaller. So that's what I use. I'd use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1 large one right there. Asparagus fern might be offered. I tend to tell my students to shy away from that just because the leather leaf fern is much easier to work with. So pins, you need pearl, and you should only need 1 black one, and 2 bags, which you can get later. I suggest, I'll put stars, get your large carnation, your mini carnations, your filler flowers, your tape, and your leather leaf right away. Okay, get all of what you need that way right away so you don't have to move around. It's going to be a little bit tighter than normal or what you're working. There's not a whole lot of elbow room. Get those things. You'll need 2 bags. You can get those later, and then the pins to package and the ribbon. The other thing you're going to need is 5 wires. Okay, and I would get those right away too. So put a little star beside that. Make sure the corsage is circled for the corsage bag, and boot our circle on scorecards. And the name is on it, and chapter number is on it too. Okay, so just make sure those cards are filled out ahead of time. Don't waste your time filling out the cards. So hopefully that was a good overview of how you should do the Corsage and Boutonniere for the Floriculture contest in our state. See you later.